The winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction 2024 is Brotherless Night, which means that Vivi Gangrasanthan adds the Women's Prize to Fiction to the Carol Shields Prize, which she won last month in May. My honest reaction to that is I'm a little bit surprised that this book won. I really thought it was a shootout between Enter Ghost and Soldier Sailor, but I can't really be too surprised that Brotherless Night won because, firstly, it is a fantastic book, and I wasn't surprised it got shortlisted, and I can't really say I wasn't surprised it got shortlisted, but I was surprised it won, can I? And after all, this is what the Women's Prize does year after year. It forces us to pick between books that are nothing short of brilliant. I'm really excited by what this means for Sri Lankan literature. We saw the Booker have a Sri Lankan winner recently when the Seven Moons of Mali Amida won, and that's 3 pretty big name awards won by Sri Lankan authors in the last 2 years now. I really hope that inspires more authors and more literature from this fantastic country. Brotherless Night itself is a retelling of a pretty horrible event that took place during the Sri Lankan Civil War, and it looks at the role of the Tamil Tigers. I thought the way that the Tigers were depicted was pretty fantastic, showing the support they had and the fear they created within the same community. It's all told through the eyes of a woman who wants to be a doctor and is struggling with the question around how that is achieved. And later when she does eventually become a doctor, and I don't really think that's a spoiler by the way, she then has to deal with the ethics of being a doctor in a conflict zone and having to pick a side and define her own ethics and how that relates to her practice of medicine. Now, I think in many ways this is a really typical Women's Prize winner because it is asking hard and interesting questions while showing us the experiences and emotions and so on of one character. It's a book that's giving the reader a few very different ways of enjoying the book. Essentially, it is quite accessible literary fiction. This would be the perfect book club book. It has very broad appeal and it would be a good conversation starter. Brotherless Night is a quite political book, and it is quite interesting to see that it beat Enter Ghost, which is also a, rather political book. And I'm tempted to say that Enter Ghost is talking about a current situation and Brotherless Night isn't, but that's simply not true. My reaction is that Brotherless Night is a worthy winner, although there were quite a few worthy winners on both the long and the shortlist this year. I want to leave you with a few final thoughts on this year's Women's Prize for Fiction. I've been reading the Women's Prize for Fiction for a few years now, and 2024 has been by far my favourite long list. I think it's impossible to create a long list of 16 books that will appeal to a wide range of readers and also where I will love every book on that long list. And there were a couple of books long listed that I didn't like, but overall I think this long list was absolutely exceptional. It is always nice when there are authors that you're a fan of and they get long listed. For me, Megan Nolan's and Peace Adzomedi are just supremely talented authors who I will pick up anything they write, and to see other readers try these authors for the first time and enjoy them because of this prize, it's so nice to see them get the credit that their work deserves, that their talent deserves, and the Women's Prize recognizing talent like this and helping them further their career. That's wonderful. Even if I would have preferred to see them go further, I just love seeing that happen. I know Anne Enright's book, The Wren, hasn't been the most popular novel on the long list, but I absolutely love it. I think Enright is brilliant. She isn't an author who needs the exposure, but it's good for the prize and it's good for us readers to see exceptional quality books get long listed, as well as newer books to us. On the other side of things, I loved In Defense of the Act by Effie Black, an author and a book I had never heard of and probably wouldn't have. The winner, Brotherless Night, was another book that I wasn't aware of when the long list was announced. And A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams was an absolute delight, and another author who I was completely unaware of. Being introduced to authors like this, who I just can't help but to respect their talent and want to read more books from them, that is such a wonderful advantage of reading the Women's Prize. And I think these are the two basic reasons why I like reading prizes, and I like reading the Women's Prize in particular: recognition for authors that I love and finding new authors to love. My favourite book from this year's long list was Enter Ghost. I also loved Solar Sailor and Then She Fell, as well as every book I have already mentioned. And as an Australian white man without children, these books really transported me to places and identities that I have never been, nor will I ever be. And empathizing with and understanding people in different situations is one of the things I hope to gain from reading. It is one of the things I value most about books. And these three novels, Enter Ghost, Soldier, Sailor, and Then She Fell, are completely different examples of how to do that, and do that wonderfully. I really enjoyed the very literary techniques that Enter Ghost used in with its quality, emotionally evocative writing. Politically, it's obviously super relevant, but I will never not adore a very high-end, brain-growing literary fiction novel that is doing the emotional work, creating a book that can be enjoyed in different ways by different readers. It is both a very good commercial fiction novel and a very good literary fiction novel. Enter Ghost was probably the most difficult piece of writing to get right on the long list, and I think it was executed fantastically. Soldier, Sailor, and Then She Fell, while being technically very different books, both tackle questions around motherhood, babies, child raising, support, and mental illness. And Then She Fell adds in an Indigenous point of view and a bit of magical realism. And as a self-described magical realism hater, this book is excellent. Happy to read magical realism if it is done by or similar to Alicia Elliott. Soldier Sailor has this stream of consciousness narrative through it, and it really reaps the benefit of focusing on one subject and doing that really deeply and really well. Nightbloom has such an interesting structure, retelling the same story from different points of view, providing you with extra information and showing bias and different opinions within the narrative. It is a structure rarely used by authors, and when they do use it, it's rarely done well as well. But this is a special novel looking at life in Ghana and the US, looking at women's rights, corruption, class, and it is just wonderful. Ordinary Human Failings is looking at the media and how they treat a family of Irish immigrants when the 7-year-old daughter is quite strongly suspected of murdering a 3-year-old girl. But it is a much deeper novel than that. It is also looking at the systematic and societal failures that lead to this point, and how ordinary people with ordinary dreams and ordinary human failings can be cast to the bottom of the pile by a society keenly looking for what they are scared of and examining where that fear may have originated from. A Trace of Sun is a typically traumatic, emotional piece of Caribbean literature that will make you feel all the emotions. It is not trying to be the most literary of novels. It is trying to show you the experience of this mother and this son and their relationship that is very broken, and it adds in a pretty killer plot to boot. There are so many good books on this year's prize. I have a lot of praise for this year's Woman's Prize, but on the flip side, what do I think the prize could do better next year? Well, I do have two things, and I think that these two things will probably get quite a bit of support. Books that are part of series shouldn't be eligible. I just hate it when that happens, and I really feel like I'm not the only one. A book needs to be standalone to make the prize. And even when you can follow what happens in a book within a series without reading the first book, your experience is always enriched by reading that earlier novel. That means that the second book is much weaker if you don't read that first novel, and often you read that second novel and you sort of understand what's going on, but it just doesn't have the same quality as if it were a standalone book. And that's what it needs. It doesn't just need to work as a standalone, it needs to have the quality of a standalone book. The other thing I would like to see different this year is books that are published after the long list is announced should not be part of the prize. I absolutely loved A Trace of Sun, but it wasn't released until after the long list was announced. You know, the Woman's Prize and the Booker Prize are the only prizes I know of that do this, and I don't understand why they're doing it. They are not thinking about their audience when they make these rules. We want to read the books. We want to read the books as soon as we know about the long list. We don't want obstacles. I understand International Women's Day is the reason around the timing for the long list for the Women's Prize, but if that is very important to the makers of the Women's Prize, maybe next year the prize should only have 11 months worth of eligibility. Maybe we need to just move that window just that little bit so that us readers can effortlessly buy all the books that we want. Overall, I think the 2024 Women's Prize has been a fantastic advertisement for future women's prizes, as well as a fantastic testament to the quality of women authors out there who are still drastically underread by a lot of men. Apparently, the average man reads 85% male authors, while the average woman reads around 60% female authors. Now, when you consider that average represents a variety of positions and that some people are going to be more extreme than that, and some people less extreme too, that's not the best statistic to hear. You know, I do think that people maybe tend to stick with authors they know that they like, so sometimes these stats can become a little bit exaggerated, but nonetheless, I hope if you're a man watching this that you've looked at my videos on the Women's Prize this year and that I've managed to pique your interest in at least one of the books from this year's Women's Prize long list, and that you think it's worthwhile giving that book a try. And if you're a woman watching this, or you're non-binary, or anything else, I hope pretty much the same thing, that I've inspired you to read some of the fabulous books on this year's long list. I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons for their support. We read 2 books together every month. So if you want to join a fantastic book club full of some very intelligent people, obviously I'm not talking about myself there, please consider signing up to support this channel. It really does make a massive difference. If you can't do that, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it around, all that sort of stuff helps the channel grow. I will be following the Women's Prize in 2025 as well, but I hope if you've subscribed because of my Women's Prize content, you'll stick around and you'll watch the other content that I create too. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.